And joining me now, Taha Arvas, who is a journalist at Daily Sabah, and Helin Sari Ertem, who is an assistant professor specializing in US-Turkish relations at Istanbul Medeniyet University. Thank you both for joining me today. Taha, I want to start with you. The Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, says he's reached a historic agreement with the U.S. president over a safe zone in Syria. So does this mean that the two sides are on the same page now?
It does. I think this idea, the 20-mile safe zone, was a Turkish idea that was floated 5 years ago. So the U.S. has kind of seen the positive parts of that and have also adopted that. So I think Turkey and the U.S. have not been as close now as they have been for many years. So we're all on the same page now.
Okay, and Helin, Turkey launched Operation Olive Branch. It's been a year now, and in the lead up to that campaign, many critics said that Kurdish civilians would be targeted, and that turned out to not be the case, and Afrin has since been stabilized. What will Turkey need to do to convince other countries, such as the U.S., that it can clear areas of terrorist groups and bring stability to regions such as Afrin?
Looking at Turkish-American relations, what I see is that Turkey is quite determined about what it is doing in the region regarding its Syria policy. So I can say that Turkish policy on Syria is quite clear now when we compare to the United States policy on Syria. So Turkey is doing its best, I think, about the civilians, not to hurt them in the region, including Kurds as well. So I think we will continue as the Turkish side, the government will continue to reflect that it will be quite careful about not hurting the civilians in the region, and it will, I think, continue to guarantee the American side that they can cooperate in a better way.
On Wednesday, 4 Americans were among 19 people killed in a suicide attack in Manbij. Just hours after the attack, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence came out and spoke about U.S. troops in Syria. Let's listen to what he had to say.
We're now actually able to begin to hand off the fight against ISIS in Syria to our coalition partners, and we are bringing our troops home. The caliphate has crumbled and ISIS has been defeated.
Okay, so there you hear the American Vice President saying that the U.S. is able to hand over the fight to the coalition partners in Syria and bringing the troops home, and that the caliphate has crumbled. So is this, Taha, is this the administration just doubling down and sticking to what is this, really it's very chaotic Syria policy?
I think President Trump has done something. He's found out, or he's realized that the previous policy wasn't working. You know, you can't just send a few U.S. soldiers, expect that they can help train a terrorist organization to fight other terrorist organizations. It doesn't really work that way. And so they've kind of seen the light in that sense. So what they've done is, I think he's realized it's a losing fight. You can't just, it's not going to happen haphazardly as it has been in the past. I mean, if you remember, President Obama was the one who called ISIS the JV squad. So he really didn't take it too seriously, and President Trump has it's fallen in his lap. So I think he realizes that handing off most of the heavy lifting to Turkey and other coalition partners will help to resolve the conflict, and that's what they've done now.
Helen, are the U.S.'s conflicting statements on Syria and the White House's overall dysfunction really complicating matters in Syria and giving groups like Daesh the window to reestablish themselves, do you think?
I think there is a huge confusion in Washington regarding the American policy on Syria. We see quite big disagreements between the Pentagon and the State Department, and I think the messages coming from the bureaucrats from Washington visiting Turkey, we see these disagreements between their messages, the hidden messages that they are giving to the Turkish bureaucrats. Between Bolton and Pompeo, for example, we see that they are not quite determined about whether to withdraw from the region or not. So there will be many more problems on the American side in the coming period. But I think Turkey uses this atmosphere in a very clever way to make its policy be understood in a better way on the American side, on the European side, and on the other partners in the region, the regional and global partners, including Iran, Russia, as well. So we will see what is going on in the region, but I'm not sure whether the American side will be withdrawing so quickly from the region. They will try to slow down their withdrawal process, quite possibly. That's highly possible in the region, especially after this bombing incident in Syria, in northern Syria. So I think the Turkish side will stay clear, be patient about what they are thinking on Syria's future, and will do their best to give this message to the American side.
So do you think that the mixed messages, conflicting messages from the White House will affect Turkey's military operation in Syria going forward?
I think the key line here is regarding the YPG relations. So if America will insist on protecting their deep relations with YPG in the region, their commitment, their highly strong engagement with this organization, Turkey will have a difficulty, I think, in their relations with the United States. So the key factor here is the YPG. Whether the YPG will be taken out of the west of Euphrates, for example, whether they will be carried to the eastern side of Euphrates, what will be the future of the YPG militants in the region? I think this is the most important point for Turkey at the moment.
Okay, Taha, let's go back to that Trump tweet where he said that he would devastate the Turkish economy if a planned military operation against the YPG in northern Syria went ahead. Last year, we saw the U.S. carry out its threat of targeting Turkey's economy. We saw a huge plunge in the lira. Have the two sides worked out their differences now that, I mean, they're on the same page for now, but have they been able to work out their differences so that we don't see a repeat of this?
I think last year's issue was a political issue. I don't think President Trump has a problem with Turkey at all. I think there were midterm elections. He needed something to galvanize his base, and it was great for him. So he played it as much as he could. And then come November, by the time the midterm elections came, it no longer served his purpose, and the problem went away. For this instance, the one with the tweet, I remember this tweet coming out, and everyone was saying, well, Trump just said he will devastate Turkey, or that the United States will devastate Turkey. And I didn't read it that way at all. I mean, he says Turkey shouldn't go into Syria and fight the YPG, et cetera. He infers that. And then he says, will devastate Turkish economy. So I think I took that to mean if Turkey goes into Syria, then it will, this conflict will devastate the Turkish economy, as it has many other countries who go into wars that they can't win, that are there for a while, because that's what he's trying to imply, that this is a difficult fight. And I said as much on several outlets right before he came out a few hours later, the next day rather, and said, you know, Turkey and U.S. economic cooperation will be great, or something like that, and then some other tweet where he says, we're going to do great things together, something the exact opposite of what that tweet would have implied. You can't just say, you know, I'm going to do this and that to Turkey, and then, 24 hours later say the exact opposite.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, because I don't think that's what he meant, frankly. But as Helin was saying, he has people that he needs to please in the White House. I mean, Bolton is an ideologue. He is the exact opposite of Trump in many instances, but he needs to hire people that will help, kind of circle the wagons around him, frankly. And so that's something that he pleased some of the people in the White House to say that. But there's an ambiguity there. Like I said, he didn't say I will, or the United States will, or the U.S. military will. He said will devastate. So I think it's on purpose. That ambiguity is there on purpose. Okay,
and Helin, do you think this pattern of ambiguity from the White House will continue? Do you think we'll see more of this, or do you think this is the last of this? Do you think that
I think this will for sure continue. The foreign policy, because what we are talking is a foreign policy crisis in the United States. They are looking for a grand strategy for the coming years, and they are not determined about what to do. They are not determined about who are the biggest threats, what will be the necessary or the suitable activity to prevent these threats, who are the friends and foes, etc. So they are not clear about their future strategy. They are not clear about the future of their own country as well. That's why we are just seeing a reflection, a minor reflection of that on Turkey. But there are reflections to the whole world.
All right, Helin, Sari, Ertem, and Taha Arvas, thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks.
Thank you.